Okay, here we go, guys. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So, this is the second community meeting that we are on for this year 2020 on Feb 20th now. And this is a community meeting that is live streamed and will be publicly posted on YouTube. So, please be mindful what you say is being recorded. So, we have a code of conduct, so be excellent to each other. And here myself, this is Vamshi Samudrala. I work for American Airlines, and from past 3 or 4 months I'm just working for Kubernetes open source community, and this is my first meeting hosting it today. And I work for SIG Contribix and release CI signal. I'm just getting into it, and that's about myself. And let's get started with this. And can anyone help me to take the notes?
I'll take the notes. We can start with the release stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, George. Okay, so yes, I see that we have Ode or George joined from release team. Hey, George, how are you? Yes,
Hi, everyone.
and you were up for the release dates. Yes, you were. Yes, just started with. Yeah, you are up for the release updates. Yes, handing over to you. Yeah.
Sweet. Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Jorge Alarcón. I am the release lead for Kubernetes 1.18. And today I come with a couple updates. So we are currently at week 7 out of 12. Right now, we have about 50 enhancements being tracked. 18 of them are alpha, 16 beta, 16 stable. So we have a nice distribution, and hopefully a bunch of really cool features are going to be released with 1.18. So please stay tuned. These past couple of days, all the people in SIG release have been doing a lot of work, a lot of wonderful work. So a couple current updates are the 1.18 Alpha 5 was just released this week. Along with that, if you go on Kubernetes, you should now be able to see the 1.18 release branch all set up and ready, to go. With that, on the CI signal end, we finally removed the 114 CI jobs, and we are going to start looking into 1.18 and the master branch separately as we move forward and prepare for code freeze, which is scheduled for Thursday, March 5. So I'm gonna stop right there. I think that is the most important thing that I'm going to say today. Code freeze is coming. We have a couple more weeks. So please make sure to get all your PRs ready, reviewed, and merged. Other than that, a couple other deadlines equally important is Monday, March 16. That's going to be week 11. Docs must be completed and reviewed. And the Kubernetes 1.18 zero release is planned for Tuesday, March 24, week 12. And those are the main updates that I have from the release team. Also, important to add, the last week I believe there were some patch releases for Kubernetes. So now we have 1.15.10, 1.16.7, and 1.17.3 available for everyone to consume. And those are my updates.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that pretty much a lot of updates, and good news that 1.18 Alpha 5 was released this week, and the patches, there were some more patches also released. And I think I think with this release team is super busy with all the other issues and everything. Yeah, thanks, Ore. Thanks, Ore, for the update. And yeah, let's now roll on to the next SIG updates. We have, as we discussed, we have SIG Windows, SIG Multi-Cluster, and SIG Auth, who will be presenting us today. And let's start with the first thing, SIG Windows. We have Michael and Patrick and Deborah. So from SIG Windows.
Yeah.
Here
Yeah,
you go, guys.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. We'll be providing you with an update on SIG Windows and what we've been doing in the last 4 months since our last community update. On the call here, we have several members from SIG Windows. We'll be presenting today. Myself, I'm one of the co-chairs. Patrick Lang, also a co-chair of SIG Windows, and Deep Debroy, who is one of our technical leads. Also on the call, we have a few more members from our team, like Mark Rossetti and others. So the first thing we want to talk about is some of the themes and investments that we'll be making for 118 and kind of highlighting some of the efforts which haven't really started in 118, but we've started some of these investments 1 or 2 releases back because there are big chunk items that really take a long time to stabilize and kind of bring to fruition. So Deep, you want to talk a little bit about Windows Identity?
Certainly. Thanks, Michael. So in the area of Windows Identity, we are going to go from beta to stable or graduate from beta to stable, a couple of features. The first one is around Active Directory and a mechanism called Group Managed Service Accounts. This allows the containers to get their identity from Active Directory server and basically pass it over to the apps. It's been in beta since about 1.16, and we have had some pretty successful deployments and planning to take it to stable in 1.18. So remove the feature flags entirely. Run as username is another field in the pod spec that we are planning to take from beta to stable. Mark has been working on that, and it's looking pretty good.
Thank you, Deep. And kind of to reiterate here, we've been working on GMSA and the run as username for a really long time. And from a Windows perspective, this is actually one of the most crucial capabilities that we can enable. A lot of the legacy Windows applications have been written in IIS, leveraging Active Directory. And this is really the capability that's going to allow those apps and workloads to land on Kubernetes with minimal invasive changes. So thank you, Deep and Mark and the rest of the community for enabling this. Next, we'll talk a little about lifecycle management and deployment. So kubeadm has been became the standard for doing a lot of the operational aspects of joining nodes into the cluster. And SIG Windows had kubeadm alpha support in the last couple of releases. With 118, we're actually revamping our entire workflow here. And we're basically going to execute kubeadm using a privileged proxy. For that, we're leveraging Rancher's Wins capability, and I added a link in the slides as well, with some built-in safeguards. So we're working with some of the security folks in the Kubernetes community to identify the right safeguards to put in place. Think of pod security policies, possibly using some admission controllers. And we're also looking to fork Wins to reduce some of the functionality that comes out of the box. So all of that's going to happen, and it's going to enable us to run kubeadm join workflows without wrapper scripts. And it's going to give us this consistent operating model that's very aligned to how Linux works. So you go to the node, you install some services. In this case, you're going to install Flannel as your CNI. You're going to install kubeproxy. You're going to install the kubelet. And then all you have to do is run join. And in our case, the CNI Flannel, for example, is going to run as a daemon set, and so will kubeproxy. And the kubeproxy thing is a little bit different than Linux because kubeproxy is installed by kubeadm in Linux. On Windows, you have to deploy it as a daemon set. We're also working on a wide variety of documentation to help users in this endeavor. And we're hoping that if this goes well, we'll be able to graduate kubeadm support in the next release or two. We're also looking into upgrade support, so we'll enable you to upgrade your nodes from one release of Kubernetes to the next. As a byproduct of this kubeadm work that we're doing, we're also trying to snap into the cluster API work, and we're going to likely provide experimental support. I don't know if we're going to call it alpha or not, for the Azure provider. So that's going to leverage the cloud-based init capability, so it allows you to bootstrap kubeadm for cluster API. And Patrick.
All right, thank you. Yeah, and so the other thing we've been working on doing over the last couple of releases is we've been working closely with some maintainers working on Containerd, so that way we can provide a path to be able to build nodes that run with CRY Containerd instead of Docker. And this is something that aligns pretty well with some of the investments that where the Windows team has been contributing as well, because they've got people that are working both on the container frameworks as well as on Containerd itself. So we've got tests in place, running in multiple environments. Those are all linked in the slides and they're up on Test Grid. And then the key work that's needed to enable running containers through CRI is linked in a tracking issue there, and it's expected to release with Containerd 1.4. And so for 118, it's going to be an alpha. There's a couple remaining issues that we need to do to get to feature parity with where we're at with the Docker engine right now. And so once those are done, then we'll work on graduating this to beta. But we're looking forward to being able to keep this consistent across Linux and Windows and allow people to build clusters with Containerd everywhere going forward. Did you want to talk about the CSI stuff, Deep?
Yeah. So thanks, Patrick. One of the major initiatives we are driving around the persistent storage side of things for Windows is developing an entity called the CSI proxy. The idea is it's a host OS service that you spin up within the Windows nodes so that CSI plugins, which are containerized and deployed for Windows, can make use of the proxy to make privileged calls into the host operating system. The set of APIs we are targeting right now is mainly targeting operations around disks, volumes, and the remote file system capabilities for Windows. And we are also developing support in the Azure Disk and the GCPD CSI node plugins to use CSI proxy as sort of the first set of CSI plugins that we deliver that uses CSI proxy. So CSI proxy work is being done all out of tree. And the idea is to enable the CSI migration initiative to move out a lot of the entry plugins from Kubernetes to the individual CSI repos. And so CSI proxy helps with that.
Thank you, Deep. All right, Patrick.
All right. Yeah, a couple other themes we've had for 118. We're looking at a couple issues that people were struggling with when they were trying to scale things up. And so there were kind of two kind of related issues that people were looking at as they were trying to use things like horizontal pod auto scaling. So one of them is that we had some difficulties with the way that we were getting statistics back from Docker. And so we've got a workaround in place for that. And this will make things like the metrics server and Prometheus work a lot better, because that's something that people have been having issues with. And then the way CPU limits were implemented has changed. So now the limits are honored accurately, even when the system's not under full load. And so those are a couple feedback issues we've had that we were able to group together and get done for 18. And if it makes sense, we may backport those to 16 or 17 once we get more feedback on them. The other thing I wanted to call out is that if anyone's been watching the test stuff, there's been this trend where when test images are updated, the Windows tests tend to fail for a couple days. And that's because we've got a manual process that we were working on getting automated in partnership with SIG testing. And so going forward, all the test images are something that can be built automatically, but we need help from testing, network, node, and storage and multiple SIGs to get these remaining PRs reviewed and merged. And so, we've got a long list here, but, we're asking all the SIGs for help to look at these PRs so that way we can get rid of this manual tech debt and make sure that tests don't flake because the Windows images are lagging those used on Linux. All the automation's in place. We just need to finish merging this test code. So any help that people could lend there would be greatly appreciated. I can go for the next one, Michael.
Yeah, by the way, on the last one, hint, George, if you can help nudge some folks for us, that'd be great.
Yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to call out briefly was we've also been working on another set of issues, making it easier to for people to take existing Windows apps and get the logs out into Kubernetes. So there's a log monitor tool that was open sourced by Microsoft, and I've actually got a demo and some more details on how to use that. But this helps bridge the gap between some of the applications that were logging to some Windows specific locations rather than standard out, and actually getting those to standard out. So that way things like kube control logs and FluentD will be able to scrape those in a consistent way. And so we've got links here in the slides today if you want to get more details on that. Did you want to take the next one, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, on the log monitor, super important tool. It basically enables a key aspect of observability for Windows. And thank you to Microsoft for open sourcing that. Now, a lot of the folks in the community are starting to use it. So a couple of notables from 1.17, since we haven't had an update in a while. We introduced the runtime class for Windows. That's going to make it a lot simpler for Windows developers to target Windows workloads on Windows nodes. In the past, we kind of relied on taints and tolerations to prevent accidental deployment of Linux workloads on Windows nodes, and that made things a little bit clunky. Now, with the runtime class, we made it a lot easier for you to define the aspects of the workload that you're working on. For example, define its architecture, the OS, and then put that all in the runtime class. And then in your pod spec, all you have to define is the runtime class name, and it will appropriately be scheduled on the right node. Along the same lines, we also added new labels for Windows nodes. So now you have a new label called Windows Build that reflects the Windows Major, Minor, and Patch revision for your Windows build, so that it could aid in the compatibility of Windows workloads to Windows host OS. In terms of plans for upcoming cycles, we're going to continue some of the major investments we've just talked about. KubeADM, as well as Cluster API. This is going to be important for lifecycle management of Windows clusters. We're going to continue working on the CSI work that Deep mentioned, because that's important for us to enable Windows workloads to have a multitude of storage options. We want to continue investing in CRI Containerd and the runtime class to make sure that we give our developers an equivalent architecture at the runtime level as with Linux. So thank you to a lot of the other SIGs that are working with us in collaboration of all these features, and we'll keep at it for the forthcoming future. The next two slides, they're there. You guys can view them anytime you want. We have weekly meetings. We have recordings of all those meetings. We have a prioritized project board if you want to see what we're working on next. And then if you want to know where to find us, we have links to all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Windows SIG. Thank you, Michael, Patrick, and Deb. Let's get on to the next SIG. That's SIG Windows, SIG multi-cluster. Let me share it. I think I have shared it. Just a minute.
Hey there, everybody. This is Paul. I'm the chair of SIG Multicluster. If we could just advance the slide, that'd be great. So in our last cycle, we have been basically discussing the future of the SIG and determining like areas where we can collaborate. The one that I'll direct folks' attention to is multi-cluster service API proposal. The link is in the slide. And finally, we are seeking folks that are interested in maintaining KubeFed. The folks that have been working on it are and have moved on to other things. So there's sort of an open need there if we want to carry that project on. Could we advance the slide? So things we need from you. Honestly, participation is key to determining what the right problems to solve in the community in this area are. So we want to hear what people are looking for the community to solve. We want to hear what what folks may be working on outside the community. One of the things that that we uncovered with a survey in the last part of the year in 2019 is that some folks have decided that like they were waiting for X or Y thing from the SIG and didn't occur on a time frame that worked for them, so they did their own thing. And we want to hear what those things are that people did. So if you're working in this area outside the community, we'd love to see your demos. We've had a few really interesting demos from projects like that that aren't in the community necessarily, but they're open source projects in that functional area. If we could just move the slide along. So KubeFed status, as I said, we're seeking maintainers. If you are interested in KubeFed, especially if you are currently using it and you're interested in helping to maintain it, you can please feel welcome to reach out to me. That's PMORIE on Slack. And we can talk about what you might be interested in doing. How you can contribute. I should have put a little bit more complete information on here. I will update these slides after. We have bi-weekly meetings that you can find in the community repo, coordinates for those. But we need your help to help us decide what problems to solve. Show us what you're building. And if you're interested in maintaining KubeFed, please give me a ping on Slack. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul Murray, and that's the SIG update from SIG multi-cluster. And let's switch on to the SIG auth.
Hi, how's it going?
Hi, Michael. So, are you able to share your slides?
Yeah, just a second. Should have prepared a little better. I can never figure this out.
That's okay. I'm sharing it otherwise if you can just.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the button disappeared. That would be helpful. Thank you.
No problem.
Actually, I think I figured it out. Well, can we see that?
Yep, go ahead.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm Mike. I am one of the 3 chairs of SIGAuth, here to give you the community update. So I have a couple cool things to highlight from our last cycle. First one is we adopted a new subproject of SIGAuth. It's the Secret Store CSI driver. It was donated to our organization by Deus Labs. And basically what it is a framework for building CSI drivers that integrate with external secret stores. It supports Vault and HashiCorp and integrates using the CSI mechanism. So it's an alternative to the secret volumes. So secrets have, Kubernetes secrets have some issues that have been pointed out over time, and there's a lot of awesome tools that support really good management of secrets, such as Vault. And we heard a lot of users wanted better, deeper integration. So we're hoping that this project can serve as a building block for people who want to integrate Kubernetes secret style volumes with their secret manager of choice. We've been doing a lot of work around certificates. So the certificates API has been in beta for a really long time. I think it's been around for 3 years, at least in beta, and hasn't made much progress, although a lot of people are using it. We want to change the status. We want to migrate it to GA. And as part of that work, we wrote a retroactive KEP. I don't even know if a real design doc existed for this API because it was so old. And we're using that KEP to organize our journey to GA. So since that retroactive KEP was merged, kind of outlining the current state of the API, we have made some updates to it to include support for multiple signers. So this was something that certain external projects like JetStack has a project called Cert Manager, which a lot of people are using. They have basically they needed to re-implement the certificates API using CRDs because the API kind of assumed a single certificate authority backing it. So we added support for we designed support for multiple signers. I'll talk about. We're actually working on implementing those changes this release, and we are slowly but surely migrating all clients that use that read certificates from disk to support dynamic rotation of certs. So this happens transparently. It's changes to the client library, and what that allows is, for example, if an API server is provisioned with a cert on disk, you can just change that certificate, and the API server will periodically reload that certificate from disk. Another big focus over the past 6 to 9 months has been performance. So the auth layers sit in between every single API request. We've made a bunch of improvements here. Some of the interesting ones are we've had really major speedups in our token caching. There's a lot of cool and interesting work that went into that, and we made the node authorizer, which is the probably one of the busiest authorizers, much faster to be able to keep up with high churn clusters. So node authorizer is responsible for doing fine-grained authorization for nodes, which are probably the most numerous client in most clusters. So it's pretty critical to keep it fast. We've also added a bunch of monitoring on both authentication and authorization, monitoring around latency, monitoring around cache performance, monitoring about which authenticators are used. And we've also added to K8s scalability prow, scalability testing target scalability limits of authentication. So I think all these PRs are super interesting to go through and see the work that was done here. So for the upcoming cycle, we have our eyes on improving scalability of storage encryption. We've kind of identified a few problems with the storage encryption architecture that we want to address. That's been a topic of a bunch of discussion in SIGAuth over the past 3 months. We are going to continue our work on the certificates API. There's a number of PRs open that are implementing some of the changes that we made to the KEP. And pod security policy has been a big topic in SIGAuth as well. It's another one of those APIs that has been in beta for a really long time and has kind of become a hodgepodge of different security features, and it's difficult to use. So we are discussing ways to better surface constraints as like security profiles for different container runtimes. So there's a proposal that is linked here about what we would define those profiles as, how we would version them. And we are still pod security policy is still in limbo, and we haven't fully figured out what we're going to do with it. So the fourth item is moving some of the new service account token support to GA. So about a year and a half ago, we implemented support for these for a new style of tokens, which we think are more secure, but it's been challenging to replace and turn down the legacy secret-based tokens because of compatibility issues. So we have some plans to address these and make that migration seamless, or as seamless as possible. But we just need time to implement and get those things out and tested. So we're going to continue to work on that. So hopefully the plans only affect you in very good ways, better performance, and better security. If they do end up breaking you, please let us know. We want to know. We do not intend to break anyone, and we are very conscious and careful about improving in ways that have minimal customer impact, bad customer impact. So how can you contribute? So join our meetings. We meet every other week on Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. File bugs if you hit anything, or if you have any issues. We always want to hear about them. If we have time, we set aside some time to, at the end of every meeting, to review that backlog, and we actually talk them over. Improve monitoring. If there's anything you want to monitor in any of our sub projects, let us know and send PRs. We are very supportive of any measures to improve reliability. And this is a list of good first issues in that comment. We would like for all Kubernetes clients to reload tokens so that we can rotate them. So there's a list of clients that are in the Kubernetes client GitHub org that have yet to change to reloading tokens. So if you use any of those clients like Java or Python, please take a look and contribute. That would be great. So here's where to find us. I'm a co-chair with Mo and Tim. Check out our homepage and our Slack channel. We're always in there, and come to our meetings. And I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for that update. And let's move on to the next announcement section. And what we have for the announcements, we have Contributor Summit coming for Amsterdam, schedule announced for Contributor Summit in Amsterdam. And if somebody's planning and somebody not yet registered for new Contributor Summits and for this summit in Amsterdam, please go ahead and register it there. And the next month's SIG updates is SIG instrumentation, storage service, catalog, steering committee, and hopefully the code of conduct. These are the 6 lined up for the next community meeting. And the last one is the shoutouts. I think there are many shoutouts this past month, and congratulations to all of people who have received tremendous shoutouts. And please feel free to recognize or to just feel a shout out at /shoutout on the Slack channel. And that's it on the shout outs. And yeah, then this community meeting notes will be posted on the dev mailing list as soon as the meeting is done. We'll post it out, and the recording will be posted with the link. And with this, I think we have pretty much 30 minutes of your time, just giving it away back, all of you. And that's it from our side for this community meeting. Thank you all for who presented it, and thanks George and Laura for taking the notes, and thanks to all the 6 that's presented today. Thank you.
See y'all next month.
Bye.